Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am glad to see you all. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Rosmiati Ahmad Sandi from Class C of Islamic Economics Postgraduate Program UIN Sunan Gunung Jati Bandung. And I will explain about the balance of Sharia economy through aggregate supply and aggregate demand approach to fulfill the lecture assignment taught by Professor Dr. Muhammad Anton Atoila. Okay, let's get started. Sharia economic balance through aggregate supply and aggregate demand approach. We will discuss the balance of the economy using the aggregate supply and aggregate demand approach and provide a basic understanding of both concepts. The compiler will explain the aggregate supply curve, which states the relationship between the price level and the supply quantity of an item, and the aggregate demand curve, which states the relationship between the price level and the quantity demanded for a good. And the compiler will also conduct a balance analysis between the two curves that occur when the number of goods offered is equal to the number of goods demanded, and their relationship to the role of labor, wage, and prices by combining the perspective of Sharia economics and macroeconomic approach that emphasizes the importance of principle of fairness in employment, the wage system, and the pricing mechanism. Introduction. The economy of a country is a complex and dynamic system that is influenced by various factors that interact with each other. One of the important concepts in economics is economics balance, where supply and demand in the economic are balanced. To understand this balance, the compiler will use the aggregation approach, that's aggregate supply and aggregate demand, to analyze further. The aggregate supply approach refers to the total supply of goods and service in the economy at various price levels. The aggregate supply curve tends to go up, indicating that producer will offer more goods and service as prices rise. Meanwhile, the aggregate demand approach reflects the total demand for goods and service in the economy at various price levels. The aggregate demand curve tends to increase so the consumers and companies will want more goods and services while prices rise. The point of economics, equilibrium is reached when the aggregate supply curve and the aggregate demand curve meet. At this point, the number of goods and services offered is the same as the number of goods and service requests, so that there are no advantage or disadvantage in economy. Changes in factors such as government spending, investment, next export, or monetary policy can affect the aggregate supply curve and aggregate demand, thus shifting the economic equilibrium point. Methodology. The method used in this study is a qualitative method. Qualitative research is a research approach that focuses on understanding, explaining, and interpreting the phenomenon being studied. This method focuses on exploring meanings, concepts, and understandings related to research topic. The data used in this study are secondary and obtained by collecting information from various books and academic journals related to the discussion of this research. The data collection technique used is a literature study, and the data is analyzed descriptively and present in a narrative format. A result and discussion. Labor market. The labor market refers to the dynamics of the interaction between the supply and demand of labor in an economy. In the context of the labor market, there are three main actors that play an important role in the interaction between labor supply and demand. First, job seekers, which are made up of individuals who are actively looking for work, including those who are facing unemployment, have lost their previous jobs, or who wants to find a job that better suits their preference. Second, The employer is an entity or individual that provides work to the workforce. Third, labor intermediaries, who acts as a relation between job seekers and employers. They operate in various forms, such as employment agencies, job fairs, or head talent account. Its function is to bring together job seekers with companies that need workers who meet the required qualifications. The government is also involved in implementing regional regulation related to labor as a form of intervention in the labor market. The purpose of this intervention is to improve the quality of life of the community by regulating the rights and obligations of the company and workers, thus creating a relationship balance between workers and entrepreneurs, as well as improving the applicable market mechanism. Economic conditions play a big role in labor market activities, where labor demand tends to increase when the economy is good and decline when the economy is down. The unemployment rate is also closely related to labor demand, with the unemployment rate low when labor demand is high, and vice versa. Activities in the labor market also affect the level of wage received by workers, where low labor demand is high but limit labor supply can lead to wage increases, while low labor demand and higher labor supply can lower wages due to higher competition between workers. Aggregate supply. According to Kenton and Walters, aggregate supply is the total supply of goods and service products in an economy using a certain price in a certain period. Aggregate supply is generally represented by an aggregate supply curve, which depicts the relationship between the price level and the amount of output available to the company. Usually, there is a positive relationship between aggregate supply and price level. Basically, the aggregate supply curves reflect the relationship between the price level that exists in the economy and the value of real production. The aggregate supply curve also shows how price change can affect aggregate demand and consumer spending, and is relevant in economic policy analysis to predict the impact of monetary and fiscal policies on real price and production level. Aggregate demand. Demand is the amount of commodities that are desired and needed in a market at a certain price point over a certain period of time and at the applicable income level. The total demand for final goods and services in economy in a given period is called aggregate demand or domestic final demand in a macroeconomic context. Aggregate demands refer to total demand for products and services in an economy by consumer, companies, and governments. The relationship between the total demand for goods and services and the current price level is depicted by the aggregate demand curve. The correlation between the amount of output required and the overall price level is known as aggregate demand. Aggregate supply curve balance and aggregate demand curve. The balance of supply and demand in Islam refers to the relationship between the price of an item and the quality of goods trade. Determination of the price and quantity of these goods is determined by the extent of supply and demand for these goods. Therefore, to analyze how price and quantities of goods are determined, we need to jointly analyze the supply and demand for certain goods. Labor in the perspective of Sharia economics. The Islamic economic system is based on awareness ethics, making it an ethical economy. But capitalism and socialism have quite striking difference from other systems. Capitalists sees worker only as workers and entrepreneurs as entrepreneurs. The status between the two inevitable result in rising and low caste levels often refers to a social stratification. This result in disparities in the allocation of authority between employers and employees, as well as disparities that depending on position, rank, and privilege. In the context of payment for workers, capitalists sees wage as a subtable for the cost of what has been done or simply to continue living, and the amount of compensation is adjusted to the minimum standard of living in the area where the worker works. Wage from the perspective of Sharia economics. In Islam, wage are often referred to as ijarah. According to fiqh, ijarah is the granting of the right of use in exchange for payment, while the price refers to a contract to earn a profit in exchange of payment. The word ijarah comes from the term al-ajru, which in Indonesia is pronounced as al-iwad and is defined as wage and salaries. According to Islam, the most economic standard fundamental is justice. Workers should be fairly compensated for the service they provide. However, not all of these methods are able to produce a system that is consistently fair. The main purpose of fair wage is to prevent mutual exploitation between workers and employers in commercial transactions. Pricing from the perspective of Sharia economics. Price is one aspect of the marketing mix that makes money in the economy. The price is intended to show the manufacturer's view and the value of the product. Price is a monetary representation of the value of the goods or service. Price is also an important factor in marketing mix operation. Pricing is very important to pay attention as price determines whether banking products and services will be purchased. Mistake in setting price can have a bad impact on the good provided. Price for banks, especially conventional banks, are interest. In this context, when there is a price imbalance or a practice that is detrimental to society, the state can play a role in regulating price to protect the public interest and prevent economic abuse. The goal is to avoid injustice, exploitation, and mafsadah that can occur in an aggregate economic system. However, it is important to consider it in one case. Islam advocates the free market and the force of supply and demand as the main merchant in determining price. Price regulating by the state must be done careful and based on principle of maqasid al-shari'ah that promote justice, balance, and general welfare. Conclusion. This paper can conclude that aggregate supply and the aggregate demand are important conceptual frameworks for understanding economic balance. The aggregate supply curves depicts the relationship between the price level and the quantity of goods offered. When the price rises, the amount of freight increases. At the same time, the aggregate demand curves reflect the relationship between the price level and the quantity of goods demanded in the economy. When the price rises, the demand tends to go down and vice versa. Balance occurs when the number of goods offered is equal to the number of goods requested. Currently, the economy is in a stable condition. Economic balance has a significant impact on society. Here are some of the impacts, including first, price stability, where economic balance helps maintain the stability of the price of goods and services. When demand and supply are in equilibrium, price fluctuation tend to be more controlled. Second, economic growth where economic balance supports sustainable economic growth. When the economy is stable, investment and production can develop well. Third, social welfare, where economic balance contributes to social welfare. The public can enjoy better access to the goods and services needed. And fourth, inequality. Although the economic balance is favorable overall, inequality can still occur. Some community groups may be more affected than others, and that fifth, economic resilience, which is economic balance, have increased people economic resilience. When the economy is unstable, the risk of unemployment and poverty is higher. Thus, from the point of view of Sharia economics, the principles of justice must be considered in employment, the wage system, and the pricing mechanism. By combining a macroeconomic approach and a Sharia economic perspective, we can understand a sustainable and equitable economic balance. That's what I can say. Hopefully, it will add to the knowledge of all of us. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.